Hello, everybody. Welcome to we're calling it the extracurricular event because we do have a pre-health prep workshop series that we'll talk about later. But this sort of ties into that. But this is all about the MCAT. If you thought this was about the DAT, you're in the wrong place. So my name is Teresa Blackman. I'm the pre-health professions advisor here at UTC, and I'm going to let my other two friends introduce themselves because, well, you can do that.
I'm Gretchen Potts. I am a professor in chemistry, and I'm also a pre-med advisor in chemistry.
I am Alicia Lee. I am a senior biochemistry major, and I will be going to medical school this fall.
Yay.
That's my mistake. Then I typed that slide, so I apologize.
All right, so we're going to jump in. The first thing we're going to talk about is some information on the 2021 testing year. So if you're going to be taking the MCAT this year, this is stuff that you need to know. I will tell you that the MCAT is far more normal, and I use those quotation marks very seriously, than it was last semester. So if you are gearing up to take the MCAT in the next couple of years, 99% of this information is going to be accurate. The 2020 year was real weird. So there are 3 testing periods, January through March, which registration for that opened up back in November. So that is now closed. April through June, and registration for that actually opens up next week. And then July through September, and registration is going to be opening in May for that. So once we get closer to May, the AAMC will let us know when those dates are. There are 31 exams for 2021. This is about average. I think they added 1 extra date in January. And they have returned back to the traditional length. So if you've been following along what's been going on with the MCAT, you know that when they started resuming testing back in the summer of 2020, they reduced the length of the test to a little over 5 hours. It is back. It is now 7.5+ hours. So as you are doing your prep, prepare for 7.5+ hours. And then the score reporting is back to 30 days, which really bums us out. We were enjoying those scores being posted in 2 weeks. So just kind of make notes of that. There is something very different with the registration. So they're doing it in waves, and I'll give you this lovely picture. You can see this picture on the AAMC website, but I'm also happy to share the slides with you once you're done. But for Group A, registration starts February 17th at noon, and that is the purple area. So if you are going to take the MCAT in Tennessee, you would register February 17th. February 18th is the sort of teal colored area. So they are strongly encouraging people not to travel super far. So don't go to like Texas or Colorado to take the MCAT. Stay local or as local as you can. But again, just so you know, if you're going to be registering for the MCAT this year, these are important dates to know. I believe that the system is open for you to start creating your account, but you're not going to be able to actually select your date until the 17th or 18th, depending on your region. So,
sorry, I can interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
I just want to add, you don't have to register on the 17th or 18th. That's just when it opens. So you can register anytime after that. But if you have a date that's highly coveted, you might want to go then.
Mm-hmm. Which I will tell you, Chattanooga, Nashville, and Atlanta are pretty highly coveted spots. So sooner rather than later. So the exams are still going to be offered at 7:30 in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're still limiting the number of people that can be in the testing center. The big thing this year is for the whole 2021 cycle of testing is that all rescheduling and cancellation fees are waived. Used to be you had to pay gobs and gobs of money to reschedule or cancel. Now it is free. So please hear me, hear my words, absorb them into your mind. If you have COVID symptoms, if you have been around someone with COVID or COVID symptoms, do not go take your test. Please reschedule. You will be fine. They will give you your money back. Do not go into a testing center and give a bunch of people COVID. thank you for coming to my TED Talk. They've also not upped the registration fee. Normally it's been a small amount, $5 to $10. It's still $320. This is the price of the MCAT from last year. And the fee assistance program opened Monday. This is super important, and I have a whole slide on it in a second, but definitely consider the fee assistance program to apply for it. You just have to make sure that you register for, or you apply for the fee assistance program before you register for your exam. They do not refund you. So if you think you might be eligible, apply for fee assistance before you pick your exam date. So speaking of fee assistance program, it's a pretty sweet deal. They save you lots and lots of money. They have expanded the eligibility to 4 times the poverty level. So if you Google what is the national poverty level, it will tell you. And if your parents make less than that, or under 4 times of what that is, then you would qualify for fee assistance. They raised it from 2019 when it was 3 times the poverty level. In response to COVID, they upped it to 4 times, and they are keeping that amount for the 2021 cycle. For those of you that are maybe not taking the MCAT this year, just kind of keep your eyes posted. Definitely follow the AAMC and MCAT on Twitter. They love to post information on Twitter. That's where you can get all the good information, but they'll update things like that. So there is also a reconsideration process for examinees. So if you were denied, you can reapply, and then they have listed out all of the groups of people that are eligible, which is basically everyone, which is nice. One big thing, and it does not matter if you were 35 years old with 7 kids and you own your own home and you own your own business, your parents' income information is what they base the fee assistance on. Unless your parents have passed away, it's got to be your parents' information. So definitely direct any specific questions to the fee assistance folks, or you can come to me. But they're pretty firm on that. So here are the benefits for the fee assistance program. So it reduces the registration cost of the MCAT to $130 instead of $320, which is very nice. You had access to all of the online prep products for free. There's a stipend for evaluation for accommodation. So the MCAT does provide accommodations for medical conditions and other situations. And so they will oftentimes require you to get evaluated by a physician, and they will help pay for that or cover the cost completely. They also will allow you to apply to medical school via the AMCAS for free. And you can submit your application to up to 20 schools, which the MCAS is about $170, and I think it's $40 or $45 per school. So that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money that you save. The fee assistance program is good for 2 years, but the AMCAS is only a one-time deal. And then you also get complimentary access to the MSAR, medical school admissions requirements, which is very, very helpful. Health and safety, it's huge right now. We want to know, how am I going to be in this room for many, many hours with other humans? So the big thing that they heard from a lot of folks last year was that the communication was kind of crappy. They did better than the DAT, don't tell anyone, but they have really upped their communication game. So they are really making sure that they're emailing registrants, emailing folks about what's going on, procedures, safety protocols, all that fun stuff. Social distancing is throughout the whole testing facility. You have to wear your mask the whole entire time, from the time you walk in the building to the time you leave the building, when you're in the bathroom, when you're taking the test, when you are all the things, whatever you're doing, mask on, covering nose and mouth. There was no language waiving the mask if you had a COVID-19 vaccine proof. So, sorry, someone moved outside and my dog started to growl. I was ready to mute in case she started yelling. But as of now, just plan to wear your mask. Hand sanitizer stations are available, and this is new. They are also allowing you to bring your own personal hand sanitizer. It cannot be more than 4 ounces, and it has to be in a clear bottle. So if you've got that Coconut Snowball Bath & Body Works that you super love, either put it in a clear bottle or find something else because it cannot have any barriers, completely clear. You can also wear gloves. They will inspect your gloves, but you are able to wear gloves if you would like to do that. They have partitions in front of all of the admissions and proctor stations. They clean all the high touch surfaces all the time. And they really, really clean the lockers, that is where all of your personal belongings go. And then they actually have about, I think it's an hour that they clean the entire testing facility before the second wave of students come in, and there are little signs that say, hey, this has been sanitized for your safety. Any questions about sanitation, health and safety? Anything? Cool. Moving on to timing, because it is everything. So these are the dates for the MCAT. I removed the January ones just because it is no longer January, so that's just superfluous. But March through September, these are the dates. These are also posted on the website. And then this is the score release. I am, again, more than happy to send you all this PowerPoint once we're done, but you can see the column test date and score release. This really help you as you're thinking about, when am I going to take the test? When am I going to submit my application? Will I have enough time? All the things, because they did go back to that 30 to 35 days, which was such a bummer. We really liked the 14-day turnaround. It was really nice. Programs and policies. So registration fee, we've already touched on the fact that it is $320 and that the reschedule fees are waived. If you are taking the test internationally, that is the only fee that they don't waive, is the international fee. So if you're taking the test in Canada, sorry, you don't get to keep your $115. So how often can you test? This is a question we get a lot. So in one calendar year, you can take the test 3 times. Within 2 calendar years, you can take the test 4 times. That does not mean year 1, I take it 3 times, and year 4, I take it, or year 2, I take it 4 times. It means in 2 calendar years, it's a number 4 tests total. So if you take 3 tests in year 1, you can only take 1 test in year 4 or year 2. I really like the number 4. Apologies. And you can only take the MCAT 7 times over the entirety of your life. And I really hope none of you are at that point where you have to take it that many times. And voids and no-shows do count towards attempts. So be mindful. Don't just take it to see how you'll do. This is not that kind of test. Testing with accommodations. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but 1.5% of people test with accommodations. Those things are commonly provided extra time, extra break time, or separate testing rooms. You do have to go through the MAO, the accommodations online system application, to get accommodation. And they do require documentation. And then they process all of that information. They do not note that you've tested with accommodation on your score. So if you're concerned about that, don't be. Any questions? Cool. So test day, what to expect. It's really long. It's 7.5 hours long. Here's sort of a breakdown of what your life is going to be like. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is do at least 1 practice test in this structure to see how you will do. You don't just get up and run a marathon for the first time the day of the marathon. You practice. Same thing here. What to bring? You need to bring your ID. Last year, they did allow people to bring expired IDs because a lot of places were closed. It was really difficult for people to renew identification. That is not the case any longer. So make sure your driver's license or whatever you're using for identification is up to date and not expired. You need to have a visible signature on it. It has to have a photo. It has to be in one piece. You can't be like, my dog ate this, here you go. And it has to be in English. check-in policies is going to feel a bit like a James Bond situation. They're going to take a palm scan of you. It's very high tech and fancy. But they will do this during check-in, before and after breaks, and at the end of the exam. They'll also scan your ID. This is only one time you get to remove your mask, and that is for the however long it takes them to snap your picture, and then you put it back on. All of your digital things are put into a bag, and your phones, your watches, all the things. The only way you can get your test scores and those test scores be verified is if you give them the unopened device bag at the end. So tell friends, tell mom, I'm not available for 7.5 hours. I'm not, falling into a ditch and lying dead somewhere, just taking the MCAT. If you have, I had a student have this question a couple of years ago. They had a digital blood sugar reader that the app was on their phone. And so they were like, can I bring this into the testing room? They had to go through the accommodations process. So if you have any sort of medical situation where you have to have a smart device, you have to have a monitor of some sort, you will have to apply for accommodation. And they most likely will just have a doctor verify that, and then you will just have to allow the device to be inspected the day of the exam. But everything else goes in the bag. Examining agreement. This protects the integrity of the exam. You're not going to tell everyone what's on it. You're not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is what it looks like. Make sure that there's a fair process. You are verifying that you are the person taking the test. You're not taking it for your friend. You're not there trying to post all the things on the internet. If you violate the examining agreement, they can cancel your scores. They will notify the school of that. And your registration privileges can be suspended. So don't violate that. do the things that they say. So any questions on the logistics, the test, the format? No? Cool.
I just want to make a comment about the reason why they're having the waves of registration this year is because when they reopened registration in May of last year, the system crashed first. And then I think I waited half a day, in a queue on my computer, actively waiting just to register. So that's probably why they've split it up. Because I think I was on my laptop for 4 or 5 hours just waiting to register.
Yeah, we got those email updates. Y'all were troopers. There is a really big increase. There's about 13,000 more applications that have been generated for this cycle than last cycle. So we are seeing an upward trend. So you may be dealing with a lot more folks taking the MCAT and applying to med school than in years past. But if y'all don't have questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia so you can reflect on the MCAT. And do you need me to unshare my screen? Oh, you're muted, by the way.
I'm just shaking my head, yes.
Okay. Are you seeing just the slides? Okay.
Try Alt Tab. It might change what we're seeing. There you go.
Better.
That's good.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna first go over how I prepared for the MCAT and then some tips on preparing for the MCAT. So I spent about 7 weeks studying for the MCAT. I took my MCAT August 1st and I started studying beginning mid-June. I self-studied, so I didn't do a prep course or anything. And the materials that I used for my self-study were the Kaplan Complete 7-book subject review for my testing year. There is already a new version for this coming testing year. So if I were you, I would get the newest version of it. But I found it really helpful. It covers all of the main subjects that you would need for it and comes with a nifty little like 20-page book of all the most important concepts that you could review like the night before if you're worried. So the way that I studied for it was I worked my way systematically through each book and summarized important concepts that culminated in a little notebook that has all of my MCAT information in it. And I only ever looked through my MCAT prep books once because I then went to my little summary notebook after that. I also took practice tests. I took 2. I know some people who study for the MCAT swear by practice tests and will say to take as many as you can, but I'm of the opinion that practice tests can only help you so much in terms of learning the actual material. So I would say take them for sure, but be mindful of how many you realistically need to take. So I studied all of my material, then took my first practice test. I then went back to review using my summarized notebook, then took a second practice test and reviewed again before my MCAT. In terms of taking practice tests, I'll get to that in a little bit. So from my MCAT experience, as well as a discussion I had with my older brother, who is currently in his 2nd year of medical school, we both kind of agreed that these are things that will be helpful when studying for the MCAT. So I've shared how I studied for the MCAT, but you really need to think about what's going to work for you, because hopefully you're familiar enough with yourself that you know how you study and what actually does work and what doesn't work, because you're going to have to make a decision of if you're going to self-study or if you're going to do a prep course. So for self-study, that's going to require a lot more discipline on you and actually structuring the material for yourself, versus a prep course. They're going to provide a little bit more structure to you and give you a lot more materials, but they are also going to cost a lot of money. So those are things to consider. After that, I would create a study plan and a timeline, because it is a lot of information to get through, and it's really difficult to just start doing it because you may not realize how long it's going to take you to get through some of that information, or how long it's going to take you to really do everything that you want to do. So set realistic goals and give yourself extra time. So if you're going to create a timeline, make sure you finish a week. I would suggest a week, but at least definitely a few days before the MCAT. So if something happens, you have a little bit of leeway in your study schedule. When studying for the MCAT, stick to your schedule, but also include breaks. And my brother and I talked about this as maybe being one of the more important points, because you're probably going to spend, on the days that you study, spend multiple hours just studying the MCAT. I had a pretty strict schedule where I started studying at 9 and had about an hour and a half break in the middle of the day, and would study till about 5, sometimes 6. Some people study more, some people study less. It just depends on you, but sleep well will help your memory, and self-care will definitely keep you motivated. And like I said, definitely take practice tests. I would maybe say at least 2, just to kind of see if you're improving as you continue to study. A lot of people may take one at the beginning, and I think that's a good place to start if you want to know maybe how to guide your studying. Taking a practice test at the very beginning will give you an idea of maybe how you need to prepare for it. But one of the things that I learned when I was reviewing my practice test was that of course, you're going to review what you got wrong, but it's going to be very important to also review what you got correct, just so that you're familiar with why you got something right. You may have just guessed or had a hunch that it might have been this problem, this answer, but it's better to understand that why you got it right and not just leave that uncertainty. It's going to help you pick up on the patterns of the types of questions the MCAT will throw at you. I'm not sure what year you guys are, but I've thought about things that I consider passive preparation. So these are things that you could do before you start actively studying for the MCAT, because I think they'll help you develop skills that will be important later on. For me, I'm a TA and a tutor, but you could also do SI. I think being involved in these sorts of activities, if you have the time, really helps you to master material that you've learned in previous courses like journal chemistry or organic, so that when you're studying for the MCAT, you don't feel as overwhelmed in learning that material. So if you have the opportunity to do one of those things, I would do it. The next thing I would say is daily reading. There's a lot of reading on the MCAT. I don't think a lot of people realize how much reading there will be. So if you're maybe concerned about your reading speed or your comprehension, I would suggest getting into the habit of reading articles every day. They don't have to necessarily be long. Just develop your reading skills so that when you get to the MCAT, your reading skills will help to carry you a little bit, especially on the critical analysis and reasoning skills section. And then the last thing is you don't get a calculator on the MCAT, but you will actually have to do somewhat complicated calculations. So if you have the opportunity in one of your classes, like not on a test, so if you're working on an assignment and you have time, just get in the habit of not relying too much on your calculator and doing the calculations yourself, because that can make a difference definitely in the first section, which is the chemistry based section, which has physics in it. So get comfortable with doing math without a calculator. And then I think she already kind of covered for taking the MCAT. I think she kind of, it was kind of touched on already, but register early, of course, because you want your preferred testing time and date. Well, the time's all the same now. When I took it, we had 3 different times in one day, but that was an interesting experience. But register early, mostly just for your location. Your testing site's going to be really important because it's going to determine if you need to travel, maybe how early you need to get up, and a lot of other logistics. It's also going to give you an idea of when you need to start studying for the MCAT. So you want to make sure you register early enough to know that you'll have enough time to study before that date. And also, if the earlier you register, you won't have to pay more money if you register late. When you take the MCAT, you have a break between each of your sections. You may not feel like you need a break during a test just because maybe you want to get it done or move forward. I would suggest taking all your breaks. Helps you refocus and get yourself grounded for the next section. And then pace yourself. I think that's kind of a given for any standardized exam, but it doesn't hurt to have that reminder. So that is all for me. Do you guys have any questions?
Thanks, Alicia. If you do have questions, you feel free to type them in the chat or unmute yourself. I know this probably is a lot of overwhelming information. I've actually advised the MCAT for years. I know you didn't get a calculator, but I did not think that you need to know how to do natural logs without one. So that would take some studying for me.
You have to know how to do it you may have to know how to do it for like pH related calculations. But there are certain tips in the math book of Kaplan that help you, because for a log, you do it based on your exponent, and then based on whatever the number is, you add or subtract like point whatever that number was.
Mhm.
And then they have a neat little conversion factor between log and natural log.
2.9 something, I think. It's been a long time.
Yeah. But there are a lot of helpful tips in the Kaplan books, which is why I really liked them.
Mhm.
I felt their math tips were really helpful when I eventually took the MCAT.
Well, that's good. If no one else has a question, I'm going to ask, for yourself, you obviously didn't use the study service, meaning you didn't pay Kaplan to for classes or Altius or anything like that. Can you tell us why you made that decision for yourself?
I didn't feel like I needed to pay so much extra money to help someone tell me how to study in a way, because I know that I'm disciplined enough to give myself a study schedule and figure out how to get through all the material in a timely manner, which is why I didn't go with a prep course. And the prep books were great too, because you still get 3 full-length practice tests along with it. So.
To jump in about the classes, a lot of the classes, especially with Kaplan, they're just going through the books. Like, you are not having an instructor that possesses secret knowledge about the MCAT. They don't often have extensive backgrounds in science or math. It's someone that works for Kaplan and they work through the curriculum. So I would definitely encourage you all to really consider, like Alicia was saying, like, learn how you learn. If you feel like you're disciplined enough, don't spend that extra $2,000 to $4,000. Because that's how expensive they are. They're between $2,000 and $4,000. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings. I think that if you're disciplined and you are able to create a study plan and work through it, that you'll do just as well.
Well, go ahead, Alicia.
I don't necessarily think that you need it through a course like Kaplan or anything. If you need someone to help kind of explain the material to you more, there's actually a lot of YouTube videos by Kaplan, by other like Khan Academy, that will explain a lot of those topics. And I would maybe try that first before trying a prep course.
I will add on with the prep courses. If you're going to pay that much money, then you need to devote the time to what it is that they recommend. And what I would tell you, if you're going to do that already, you could do it on your own. But also Altius actually recommends like an entire semester of intense studying. There are a couple other universities in our area where they run them through the university, and the students take no other courses but that semester, and they spend the whole time studying. So they do. I will tell you, if you look at Altius, they claim very high acceptance rates based on it. But if you put that much time into studying, the chances are you will obviously get in. But then you also have to have the other key things that you need for medical school as well. So I'm going to ask the 2 people that are on here, have you guys, are you going to take it this summer, or have you started studying yet? You can type in the chat or unmute, whatever you like, just to let us know where you are in the process.
I'll be taking it spring of 22. So
spring of 20. So you still have another year. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a freshman. I just want to be prepared.
Oh, well, that's all right. That's okay. So we're glad you're both here. So this is great. I will add that Alicia has been accepted to medical school. I won't share because it's private, but she has been accepted. So we do have an expert in how to do well in the MCAT and be accepted into medical school. So congratulations to Alicia. We appreciate her time. You know, this is her senior year, her last semester. So she's super busy. So we appreciate the time that she's given us. Teresa, do you want to go ahead and share the screen? Because we're going to do a practice problem right now, I think is the next thing, right?
We are. So we are going to let you all take a little adventurous journey on what it's going to be like. Can you all see?
Yes. So what it is first there'll be a passage on the next slide. I tried to pick the shortest one, but it is kind of long. So we're going to read that, and then we'll move to the question, which is on the following slide with the selections, and I'm going to put it up as a poll for you to answer as a poll, and we can all do it, all of 5 of us, to see how we do. So if you'll move to the next slide. Whoops. So I'll give you about 1 more minute. Okay, Teresa, would you move to the next slide, please? So I'll put up the poll in a second and give you a chance to read this. Okay, let's see how we do. It's the same as the questions. All right. Oh, I haven't launched it yet. Sorry. Now you should be able to answer. And I don't know, as hosts, can you guys vote? It says only 1 out of 2 people voting. I'm going to unhost you, Alicia, see if you can vote too. There we go.
I can vote now.
Okay.
I can't, but I would have to stop sharing my screen.
I know. So that's why I forgot about that part.
I can see the answer on the next slide. So,
Okay. All right. So we have 1 for C and 2 for D. I don't know who you are, so don't worry. You don't need to claim that that was you. So I'm going to go ahead and end polling. Okay. And this is just coloring. It doesn't say, sorry, I'll share the results. You can just see it. Sorry. 1 person selected C and 2 people selected D. So I'm going to stop sharing. And then Teresa, you should be able to move to the next slide so we can learn the answer. Is it C or D? It's D.
D.
The key to that question was understanding 1 word.
Can you tell us?
It was I think it was a macrosociological. You have to know what that means. And I was actually talking to my brother for behavioral science section. It might be helpful to get flashcards because that is the section that relies most heavily on definitions.
And that actually is a root. I actually didn't know that word, but I knew macro meant large. So so looking at the bigger picture versus micro. And that's how I answered this like on my own without actually reading the intro. I didn't even know you were supposed to read the section when I tried to answer it.
Well, I mean, micro tends to be more like actually interacting with the people versus like macro, you're doing it without interacting with individuals.
Mm-hmm. So, and actually there's an explanation. I think, Teresa, if you go to the next slide, it explains it. So says the sociology question tests on the reasoning about design and execution of research with material that is covered by understanding social structure. I'll add, we didn't tell you what area this was coming from when we picked the question. So option D is the correct answer because tracking changes in websites would provide data on the availability, growth or decline of information about rare disorders. This type of project is aligned with a macro sociological approach because it would allow a researcher to determine how the organization of health in a society changes over time. The other options are incorrect because they are more similar to a micro sociological approach, as each would result in data that is based on small scale interactions or individual decisions. Now, we actually kind of talked already about this, but we do have the next slide is a little discussion that I believe Teresa is going to lead about what we want to think about when we talk about attacking questions. So.
Yeah, and we've kind of already started that conversation talking about roots of things in flashcards. It's a very similar plan of attack for the GRE because there's a huge nasty section on vocabulary words that no human uses, but they're out there. Really understanding language and understanding roots will help you. It's sort of working smarter, not harder mentality, because if you know the root or you know part of a word, it can help you figure out the parts that you don't know, and at the very least help you make a more educated guess if you truly have no clue. So definitely flashcards. I really like Magoosh. They have some really neat flashcard apps that you can use on your phone. AAMC on their MCAT Prep Hub, they have flashcards for the MCAT that you can use. But you could even use GRE Prep, the vocab section, to really heighten your vocabulary. Because, you know, when you're in medical school, you're going to be dealing with a lot of Latin phrases and Latin terms, and a lot of the meaning of those things are very much in the root. And Dr. Potts put Magoosh in the chat, so definitely check that out. But yeah, everybody else chime in. What are some things that you, for Amelia and Morgan, what are things that you guys think might be helpful, or things you've toyed with on how to attack questions? No pressure.
I'll jump in here and just say, I just want to say that normally you would get the reading the entire time. It wouldn't go away. So you'd be able to go back and refer to it. So sorry, go ahead. I think it was Millie, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that like making sure I read the question and actually understand what it's asking, because I feel like a lot of time there's extra information that doesn't actually matter, or the question can be misleading. So
I'm going to ask Alicia a question. Alicia, would you recommend reading the questions first before you do the reading? So then you would target in the reading. What worked best for you?
I actually would read the questions first, because there are going to be some questions that if you know the background or the concept of it, especially in the science space, so the chemistry and the biology sections, that you can actually answer without reading the passage, and that helps save you some time. So I would actually read the question first before looking at the passage.
I'm going to follow up. So do you have, so if the passage is on the screen, you have all the questions below it so you can see the ones that
you
refer
see
to it?
one question at a time.
Okay.
So you have the passage on the left-hand side of the screen. On the right-hand side, you see one question at a time.
Okay.
And the passage will stay there until you finish all the questions that are associated with the passage.
Okay.
can you skip questions and come back to them?
Yes, so the software is actually pretty user-friendly. So you can you can flag questions, and we'll get to, once you get through all the questions, it'll take you to a page, and you can just hit, I only want to review all the flagged questions or the questions I didn't answer. So that'll be very helpful. And there's functions for highlighting or crossing things out of the passage and stuff like that. It's really good.
Yeah, that was another one of my list of things to talk about when attacking questions. Definitely utilize the ability to flag questions, to come back to things. There's no sense in you spending 20 minutes on one question and not being able to answer maybe 10 or 12 questions that you can go through really quickly. There's a lot of mental strategy to that. It kind of boosts your confidence. You feel like, okay, like I know what I'm doing. I've got this. And you feel like once you get to questions that are more challenging, especially since you've answered all of the things that your gut, like, you know, this is the right answer, you actually can devote better mental energy to those questions that you are not as sure on, because you don't feel that pressure of, I've got to hurry up and answer this because I have, you know, Lord knows how many left and I only have this amount of time and we've got to go, 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 go. Circling back to reading comprehension, I would also encourage you guys to time yourself, give yourself a time limit, and practice reading reading passages with a time limit. We can get very, especially test day, anxious, and you kind of want to, you know, jump to the next, like, I want to get this started, and you'll miss key things because, you know, hopefully you guys are picking up that in some passages there's one word or there's one phrase that triggers the answer. And if you are not comfortable reading in a limited time and not able to read and comprehend in a limited amount of time, you're going to make silly mistakes and you're going to have a lower score because you're not going to answer the questions that you could have answered correctly by just taking your time and not feeling rushed. So some tips.
I'm going to pop in here with one more question. I probably should already know the answer to this, but Alicia and Teresa, is it to your advantage to guess or leave the question blank?
Definitely guess, because you're not penalized.
Okay.
You get no points if you don't answer it. You make
Okay.
points. So, but the big thing here in attacking questions is how you go into this process will really dictate how you approach questions. If you take the time to prepare, you do that passive learning, then you step into more active studying, and you really give yourself enough time, you will do so much better on the MCAT. The biggest issue I have when counseling students on timeline and when to take the MCAT is they want to dictate when they take the MCAT by a timeline that they created possibly 2 years prior. This is a fluid process. Give yourself time. If you don't feel ready, don't take it. It's a lot of money. They will see your attempts. The only way they don't is if you void your scores. And then you've wasted money and time and anguish. So take it when you are ready. The end goal is to get into medical school. So if that takes a little bit longer than you thought it would sophomore year, that's fine, because you're in medical school.
Yeah, I will say that. So even though like I did get accepted and I'll be starting right after I graduate from undergrad, I know in my brother's class, there are people who have had other careers and then come back to medical school. There are people who have applied multiple times and got in on like their third try. So it takes patience.
I think they released a statistic. I was in a pre-health advisor discussion yesterday. 65 to 69% of people admitted to a medical school have taken a gap year. The average age of a first-year med student is 26. So it's not the norm to go in straight after undergrad anymore. So don't feel like you have to. Definitely do that if that's what you want to do and you are prepared, but be ready. Don't do it just because so-and-so said that they had to do it. And it's really important to know everyone's journey is different. You know, we're super grateful for Alicia to come and share her experience, but that was her experience and that's how she prepared. It may not be the same for you, and don't feel like it has to be. It's very different. People learn differently. People approach things differently. So that's really the core on attacking questions and attacking the MCAT is be ready, know how you learn. Since you guys have a few more years before you're going to be enjoying the experience of the MCAT, really hone in on how do I learn? There are all kinds of free assessments online that you can do, jump into learning workshops. I know the Center for Academic Support and Advisement is going to be starting up some study skills and prep workshops over the next couple semesters. Take advantage of that stuff, because if you can figure out how you learn, you will be able to strategize on how to answer these questions. And then there's note in the chat about metacognition. Did I say that right?
Yeah, so metacognition is basically learning about how you learn or how you think. And there are lots of videos on YouTube about it. I teach it in my quant class. I've never had either of you in my quant class, but it is it's a sophomore, junior, senior year, depending on what your major is. We get a lot of science majors in there. And I actually spend a week talking about metacognition, and students have said that it has really helped them to move out of the memorizing and move more into the analyzing and critical thinking and synthesizing that you need, especially in college. So if you think about your freshman year, Morgan, I think you said you were in your freshman year, that studying in college is a lot different than studying in high school. And a lot of people tell me, I actually do a reflection video and ask them to take a video of themselves talking about studying. And most of them say, I never studied in high school, or I crammed the night before and just did much memorization. And that's not effective in college, because we don't ask you memorization questions, but neither is the MCAT memorization either. So the earlier you learn about your process and how you study, the goal is to, and Teresa already mentioned this, one of my favorite things is study smarter, not harder. It's a very good key term. And I'll actually, Morgan, you still have plenty of time. Millie, this would be a good time to think about it maybe this summer, is a book that I'm going to share with you. I'll share in the chat. It's called Teach Yourself to Learn, or Teaching Yourself How to Learn, or How to Study, whatever. I'm going to put it in there, the link, and you can get it off of Amazon. It's a short book. I don't think it's more than 100 pages, might be 128, but I highly recommend it for my students. And it's written by a PhD in chemistry, a scientist who runs a student success center at a university. So I guess I like it a lot because she's a chemist and I'm a chemist as well, but I have students who've been very successful in following her path. So it will change how you study, but you will study less. You will actually study less. So let's move on. We have just a couple minutes left. We have one more question. Well, I'll give you 1 minute and I'll show you that it's the same passage. So I'll give you 1 minute to look at the passage again. So it's the same passage, and then we'll answer one more question. So you can start now. All right, Teresa, if you can move to the next slide, I'll give you 1 minute to look at this, and then I'll put the poll up. I might give you 30 seconds. A minute's a long time. All right. Oops. Need to change the question. There we go. All right. So now you should be able to select an answer. All right. Hope y'all are right, because you all selected the same thing. So everyone selected B as the choice, which is affected individuals are less likely to conceal their condition as it becomes less stigmatized. Teresa, if you would, let's see. It is the right answer. I wonder if our conversation about it helped. We'll see.
Hopefully.
I know. So B is the right answer. And the reason is this is, again, a sociology question, evaluates the skill of scientific reasoning and problem solving with the theoretical paradigm that is listed under the content category of understanding social structure. Symbolic interactionalism focuses on how meaning is constructed through small-scale social interactions. As a concept that is relevant to social interactions and the illness experience, social stigma is also closely associated with symbolic interactionism. Thus, the correct answer is option B, which results in reasoning from the perspective of symbolic interactionism to make a prediction about social interactions and stigmatization. The incorrect options make predictions about large-scale social change or about the disease itself, which are not consistent with the paradigm of social interactionism. Alicia, do you have anything to add?
Not really. This is just another, goes back to my point about behavioral science being very definition heavy, because you have to understand all the terminology in order to understand the question. So if you break up the idea of symbolic and interactionism, well, if you think about interactions having some sort of symbolic meaning, is how I would like read that definition. And you're right, I have seen these questions because these are from like the 12 questions when you go to practice with the MCAT features. These were two of the questions from that.
So I believe our next slide is the question slide. I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah, just kind of a plug. So the first week of March, we are doing pre-health prep school. So each day, I believe it's from 2 to 3, we're doing a 1-hour workshop where we're going to talk about different aspects of your application. So what all goes into a common application. This is not just a, McDonald's app to work for the summer. This is a beast of an application. Talk about resume, personal statements, interview, and then on Friday of that week, we'll actually do virtual mock interviews. And one thing that we did learn, I was in an AMCAS seminar yesterday, is that a lot of medical schools have really liked this virtual interview format. And so there's already been a lot of schools saying, hey, even when the pandemic is largely over and life is pretty much back to normal, we're still going to be doing virtual interviews. So a virtual interview is very different from an in-person interview. So I definitely encourage you, even if you are not, going to med school for the next couple of years, come to these events, help hone your skills. There's a lot of things that a good resume now can help you with. So any final questions or concerns, thoughts?
I want to follow up with a big thank you to Alicia for leading us through her studying and giving great tips. I've never thought of that passive before. They are things that I do. They are all things that I do, but I had not thought about that before actually sitting down to do your studying for the MCAT. It's kind of prep. What's the prep you need to do before you have to do the heavy studying? So now's the time to start it. I did not type in the chat. I'm sorry. The name of the book is, it's on my counter over there and I can't see it. I think it's Teach Yourself How to Learn. It's Teach Yourself. Are you typing it? Okay, Teach Yourself How to Learn. And the author is Sandra McGuire, Saundra McGuire. So if you get any variation of that, you'll find the book, I'm sure. But also she has videos on YouTube there where she's interviewed about it. There's one that I have shared with my class that's 45 minutes long that I asked them to watch as an optional video. And you can learn a lot from that. It follows the book. So if you want to start with that and then maybe consider getting the book, that's a good way to get going. So, and if you have no other questions, we want to thank you for being here today. And again, thank Alicia so much. We are so grateful for your time. So thank you.
All right. Have a good afternoon, guys.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.